and welcome to Navigating Life with Annette Campo. I'm your host. I am thrilled to have you join me on this journey of discovery, growth, and inspiration. Life is beautiful with unpredictable adventures, and each episode of this podcast is dedicated to exploring those challenges and triumphs that make each of our stories so unique. Whether you're seeking personal advice on development, thinking about starting a business, maybe navigating a career change, even possibly losing a loved one, you are in the right space. Let's get started. Super excited to have you all with me today. And thank you for taking the time to share with me your thoughts over this past week and looking into life and our journey through it together. Over this podcast, we're going to talk and cover a topic about actually restoring trust and restoring trust in the aspect of whatever you're struggling with. For restoring trust, it falls into many relationships that we have in our lives. It can be parenting. It can be our parents' relationships with us. It can be just relationships with boys, girls, the differences, why we have them. Romantic relationships. And obviously, if you know me or have heard things that I've published, you know I love to talk about love. It just really fills my heart when we experience love for mankind. For me, it could have been my first, my second, or who knows where my journey is going to lead next. It could be family dynamics, could be something at work. Something maybe in your career or a business that you may have. It may even be, handling employees, working with kids, your children, maybe nieces or nephews. Name the relationship. We're going to talk about it today when it comes into that broken trust. Broken trust is one of the most challenging things that people will go through because having trust with someone brings down that vulnerability, those walls that we have, and they allow someone into that safe space. And so personally, my life journey with broken trust has been pretty much that whole list, that laundry list that I had. There is something in there that, something has happened in my past life that has created this broken trust. And when we don't handle that broken trust and those emotions and the mindset around it, we begin to alter our life quality. So we know that going back and unpacking what has happened or processing what has happened to us in that broken trust is that first step to be able to go into the retrusting of that individual. And I've had quite a few experiences where I've been able to retrust into a relationship. One of the first relationships that I had mistrust in was earlier in my life. When I was in my, late 20s and 30s, and it was a very close friend of mine. To this day, not to give you the plot and have it thicken over the podcast, but we are still very close today. And she shared some confidential information about me that I only shared with her, and in turn ultimately affected the quality of my life because it was used against me, not only in business but as well in my personal life. And so to work through that and process through that was very difficult for me because not only was the trust broken in my heart, but my mind was seeing all different people's behaviors react to it based on it being confidential information about choices that I was making that were my own private space. And so when I look back at that in, going through it, she never ever came forward and said, "Annette, I'm sorry." She never had that forgiveness that we as humans have been programmed to think is that first step. And ultimately, it's not the first step because forgiveness is given by the one who gives it, not by the one who receives it. And I think when I realized that, as I was unpacking these emotions, I realized that I can give my own forgiveness. I can have that apology that maybe I'll never get. Or if I do get, it's in the future, but my life quality isn't depending on that individual providing me something that I needed to be able to improve my life or to be able to actually just move on emotionally. Our minds are wired in such a way that our brain automatically defaults to thinking the negative, or what we would consider survival. How can I protect myself so I don't get hurt anymore? And that mechanism that goes off is something that I have had to reprogram and commit to through affirmations, through education, through obviously counseling, to understand how, yes, I'm going to feel that, but being able to switch that mindset to get to the point where I understood that it's time to unpack that. And that unpacking is important for me to be able to give myself the forgiveness of the situation. And by healing my heart, by programming my brain, allowed my life quality to increase at such a faster level. Because many of us go through life and use the word stew, but, we kind of sit in it. And we may even, doggy paddle through it, if to use an analogy, and we start to really enjoy it because it becomes what we consider almost a victimhood, that I've been wronged and these are the reasons why my life has ended up this way. And that's where switching that mindset in the beginning to get into that healing part of the control that you have of your own mind that affects your heart will allow you to increase that life quality that, you so deserve. I so deserve. And so when we look at situations that come up in our life, for instance, this one I'm sharing with you now, I understood that I needed to forgive her and give grace to myself in the emotions that I'm experiencing through that process. And when I begin to realize that, I also realize that having this burden becomes almost like a weight on your shoulders. And it was interesting as I looked at pictures of myself later in life, back at this scenario, and my posture was actually different. Like my posture was very slumped over. It was as if the weight of the situation was bearing down on the frame, on my spine, and compressing it. And what I realized that in pictures, as I went through this process of unpacking it, my posture even changed. My persona, my energy field that I was giving out to others was changing. Now, that was not given to me. That was created by me. That was a conscious choice of me deciding that I wanted this to be different. This made me realize that I didn't want it to affect my life long term. Because when we have these burdens in our life that we are not addressing, it becomes almost to the point of affecting us physically. And our hormones will start to release things like cortisol and, different things that will affect the inflammation in your body. So people will sometimes say, oh, my knee's painful, or my back is painful, or I have a headache. Think about, is there something going on in your life that maybe you haven't forgiven, that maybe you haven't unpacked, that you haven't went and processed through it and journaled about it, and you haven't talked about it, because that cortisol will begin to attack exactly the spot where your body is the most vulnerable. And so when I go back to those times and look at those pictures, I also begin to think about, where was my health? How is it affecting me, health-wise? And if these things are very important to you, which I believe you are important, I believe that you're worthy of having the quality of life that you deserve, that you crave, that you want, then you need to handle and discuss and unpack this broken trust. We understand that this is going to be unpacking of maybe accumulation of lies in the situation, a lapse of judgment of the individual, secrets, could be infidelity, could be anything from emotional affair, because there's a difference, obviously. We know that how it affects us is differently. We also realize that knowing that that trust was broken and that the betrayal that you feel from it. So the first thing is to really recognize, what was it? that caused this mistrust or this broken in the trust. And then begin to understand that when you know how painful that is, that there is a life on the other side. There is an energy force that you can create through that healing process that will begin to truly impact your life. And so when I was journaling, I actually referenced 5 things that I wanted to talk about today. And the first one is just reading over my notes here is don't blame yourself. We know that when a situation happens, I personally always jump to the conclusion that I have personal responsibility. Even if it's a little bit, we make conscious decisions in reacting to situations that we choose. And our reaction ultimately is that next phase of where we decide to go with the situation. So also, I realized the grieving, that process of going through and understanding that it hurts, that that's painful, and understanding that it's okay that it hurts and that it's painful because you are a living, breathing person. We are mankind. We are able to feel these emotions, and it makes us who we are. The third thing I talked about is be patient. I know many times that we get impatient. We want things to happen. We want closure. We want conclusion. Unfortunately, this process is not a fast process. It's not like you can talk about it today and tomorrow will be different. It's going to resurface if you don't unpack it as I use over the course of the time that you're going through these thoughts and these emotions. And then also remember that the commitment to the relationship. Are you able to make that recommitment to the relationship? Is it other individual open to recreating that relationship? Because the relationship's different. You can't go back and recreate something that was there because it's totally changed. So is it healthy for you to be able to recreate that? That's one of the questions. And the second piece is that person able to meet you where you need them to meet once you go through this. And I think that that's really important to understand because not everybody is in the same place that you are, and maybe that broken trust came from them having brokenness in them not handling things in their life. And sometimes our paths cross and then they don't cross anymore. And sometimes I look at people as kind of being seasons. We have people in our life that are like a leaf. And a leaf on a tree absorbs all of the water and energy going all the way down the tree into the roots of the ground, right? But at some point, that the earth stops, especially in the state that I'm in, which is Michigan, because in the winter and the fall, it stops, right? There's no water going through that tree that feeds that leaf. And so what ends up happening is the leaf begins to change colors, and then it drops, it falls, and it blows. And we have people that are leaves that kind of blow in and blow out of our lives. And it's not personal. It's whatever their journey is going in, whatever they're going through. However, you have to recognize what people are your branches, the ones that, if you went out onto that branch, would it be able to support you? Is it able to support you in where you're at in your life journey? And I tend to look at the strongest relationships as my roots, the trunk of the tree and the roots that it spreads across Mother Earth. Those are the people that are the steadfast ones in my life that haven't broken trust. So if you had a trust break with maybe someone that's your foundation or the roots of your tree, that's devastating at times. And that is where we feel the most pain. We have the most grief. And that's going to take a little bit longer. Where if it maybe is a distrust of someone that was maybe a leaf in your life that that they're going to blow in and blow out, it doesn't hurt as much. You haven't been as vulnerable with that individual where that maybe that trust wasn't broken so deeply. So looking into the future with this person, analyze what is that relationship value to you? Are they a leaf? Are they a branch? Are they the trunk and the roots of your life? Because that will help you understand that next part of the recovery if you're going to reestablish that relationship. And then, of course, the last step, which is always the most important, is really taking care of you, taking care of what your needs are, because we are an energy force. And just like a refrigerator, we could have the most expensive refrigerator in the world and it has all the bells and whistles, and it may even order our groceries for us as we realize that we're out of milk. However, if we don't plug that refrigerator in to an energy force, it literally is a useless piece of machinery. And I look at sometimes us as humans, we have to plug in. We have to have that recharging process where we are plugged into a resource. If that is a partnership that you have, if that is your children, you know what your life force energies are. And that's how we begin to recharge ourselves. And through that process, the stronger our charge is, the stronger we are in our recovery on a broken mistrust situation. So as we, kind of process through whatever you feel that you want to tackle that's happened in your life journey, it may not have been in the last 2 weeks. It may have been 20 years ago. It could have been maybe when you were a teenager. Wherever that's at, begin to really take these steps and start to walk through them and begin to give out the forgiveness and the empathy and the grace to you, to you, to you as the human that wants to create a lifestyle, create a life quality that you deserve. Because ultimately, you are in control of this. Nobody can affect your life until you allow them to. And if that has happened, then this is where you take back that control. You take back that control to do what's best for you. And I want to share a starting point. If you haven't already purchased the book that I wrote, it actually is Life Kaleidoscope, and I share some of the journeys in my life and the different relationships I've had and how to navigate through those. The part that I wanted to share today in the book and read to you really talks about that beginning stages of not knowing what I was feeling and what I was experiencing by having that broken trust. It goes as, it all began with the welcome to my world. I didn't realize that this mistrust was affecting me so deeply. It felt like I was either crying or just screaming out loud. I was actually sitting in a coffee shop. I scanned the surroundings, almost wondering if the intensity of my thoughts could be heard by others. The noise in my mind was overwhelming. However, I fixated on this man with brown hair and kind eyes and a round mouth who met my gaze. He seemed like he wanted to offer support, but hesitated, likely due to the uncertainty written all over my face. Now, I come to realize at that point, like me, he was probably grappling with the sounds and the thoughts that were rationalizing even from that morning, let alone the entire day, as seeming most impossible task. Why would he possibly offer anything to me? Friends, I confide in a world expressing my inability to fathom how I can imagine such a situation, not only for myself, but even for this man sitting across from me in this coffee shop, only later realizing that navigating through the similar struggles at different points on our own journeys. Two souls struggling with something met in a coffee shop without words could speak and understand what was going on. In my introspect expedition, which I whimsically referred to as my laundry list, I divulged into the information that molded my identity. These elements are present without any hierarchy of significance and not predetermined chronological sequence. And those thoughts in my head at that point were really clear that we as humans, our paths cross, and whatever we were struggling with can potentially overlap into somebody else's life. So I personally at that point made a decision that I needed to figure this out. I needed to figure out how I can process through certain topics in my life that ultimately are affecting my quality of life, as well as the people that my path cross with. And so I challenge you, if this is something that you are struggling with, that you have something in your life that's kind of holding you back, that you haven't thought through and unpacked and went through those steps that I shared with you that I went through, please do, because the other side is a beautiful place, and it's a place that you're ultimately in control of. You feel great about yourself. You show up differently, because how we show up here is how we show up everywhere. And ultimately, your life quality will increase. Until then, always know I'm here on this life journey with you, and I believe in you. Thank you for joining me. Together, we always celebrate the victories, learn from the setbacks, and find joy in every step of the journey. Subscribe now and embark on this adventure with us, where every episode is an opportunity to grow, thrive, and navigate life with confidence and grace. Follow the podcast. Go to AnnetteCompo.com. That's AnnetteCompo.com to buy the book Life Kaleidoscope and learn more about my retreats that will elevate your journey. We have one coming up on September 15th, all inclusive for you to be a part of smaller masterminds like others just like you.